guys, welcome back to another functional anatomy video where today we're going to be talking about muscle architecture. So before we jump right into it quickly, I just wanted to talk about the channel quickly for a second, I guess. I just want to let you know that I'm constantly trying to come up with new and engaging ideas. I know you haven't seen much of it yet because it's still new, but plenty of plans down the future for content ideas and stuff. So I just encourage you to stick with me for a little bit, like and subscribe, and we're going to get some good content. Just a secret between you and I for now. The next big thing I'm planning to introduce, hopefully as soon as maybe even end of this week or next week, is 1 minute definitions, because your time is precious and I don't want to take up too much of it. So yeah, I want to get into some 1 minute definitions. Okay, I mentioned already, today we're talking about muscle architecture. This, if you would like, is kind of a part 2 to the muscle structure and function. Like they're related, I guess, but we're kind of talking about something different here. So we're going to delve into it straight away by looking at this funky little drawing that I've drawn, which I'm actually kind of proud of. It actually looks pretty good. So I've labeled it for you guys as well. In red, we've got the muscle. And either side of the muscle, we've got the aponeurosis and the tendon, right? So let's talk about it. So the aponeurosis are like these sheaths on either side of the muscle, obviously. They're very large in surface area, which is great for us because that means that these muscles and these muscle fibers, a lot of them can attach to a single aponeurosis without taking up too much space at all, which is really good. So another little perk of these aponeurosis is it allows for this pennation of muscles. So in case you don't know what that means, pennation, it's kind of just, see how they're slightly diagonal? That's what we want because it allows for the muscle to be more crammed and have more fibers, and it also allows for a stronger muscle. So that is really good, really well designed, great architecture. And then you may notice that this tendon is continuous with this aponeurosis, and you'd be correct in saying that. So this tendon basically just attaches to the end of it. So this is like the muscle area, and then you transition to a tendon which attaches muscle to bone. Anyway, so what I was going to talk about as well quickly, I'm going to go more into depth on this structure in the tendon video when I release it. But just for now, to satisfy your curiosity potentially, we're going to go a bit in depth, I guess. So you may know that muscle has some elastic properties, you know, it can stretch and stuff. So it would be quite troubling if this aponeurosis structure was very stiff, right? Because then we would potentially be getting a lot of damage to our muscles when we move them around. So the good thing about this aponeurosis structure is it's actually quite elastic as well. So it can move around with muscle, no problem at all. And then as we transition from here down to here, we get more and more stiffer and stiffer because this tendon isn't supposed to be as stiff. It's supposed to resist the movement because it's attaching onto a bone. So we don't want too much movement on the bone itself, right? So down here, we've got a stiffer structure. And this whole structure is usually just referred to as the tendon aponeurosis structure. You usually consider them as one single structure, not the tendon and the aponeurosis. Okay guys, this might be a bit more like you were expecting when you clicked on this video perhaps, you know, like kind of different types of muscle. So we're going to go through this quickly because I actually don't want to talk about this for that long. So different types of muscle here, I've just drawn up 3 examples because there's only a couple points I want to highlight. So we've got strap-like muscle here where the fascicles are running parallel to the long axis. So the long axis is this way for this one. And then we've got pennate muscle. Long axis is still this side here, but the fascicles are running at some kind of angle to the long axis. And then I've got down here both question mark. That's not what that type of muscle is called. I'm just trying to get you to think a bit about some stuff going on here. So this is triangular muscle. This one's probably the worst drawn out of all them. But it has some kind of intermediate characteristics of both of these muscles, I guess. So that's why I've written that as both question mark, but this is actually a triangular muscle. So I'm going to go into this very shortly, but this has more sarcomeres, if you'd imagine, in parallel. Not too many, sorry, no, wow, that was really bad. I might just cut that out. So this strap-like muscle has, if you can imagine, got a lot of sarcomeres in series, so after one another, compared to in parallel, right? Like, look at this. Boom versus boom. Not that much. Whereas this one, it's kind of got a lot in parallel and a decent amount in series as well. So they're constructed very differently. And I'm going to get into that in a quick second. Real quick, here's some other ones you might be used to. So strap-like muscle, we've already seen that one. Good example of this is the sarcomeres muscle on your leg. I don't actually know if the camera can get that. Fusiform biceps, so this has actually got two bellies. Unipennate, bipennate, and there's also multipennate. So we've got muscles of the hand, pretty much unipennate, bipennate, so that's the rectus femoris there. So we've got the tendon in the middle, and then we've got the sheaths of muscle going either side, and multipennate deltoid muscle, because you've got, you know, your front, middle, and back deltoid. And then we've got the triangular or radiate. Good example of that is the pec major. It's kind of got fibers going all over the place. So there you go. That picture's for your satisfaction in case your eyes were bleeding after you saw my drawings. Okay guys, we're back. I just realized I rubbed off my drawings from before to put up a bit of paper, and I've had to draw them back up, so that was not fun. But whatever. So what we're going to quickly get into before we talk about the sarcomeres in series versus parallel is talk about these cross-sectional areas. So the first one I'm going to mention to you is that anatomical cross-sectional area, so ACSA. And this one is 90 degrees to the long axis of a muscle. All right. So we know with the strap-like muscle, right, the long axis is here, right, because it's the long axis. So the anatomical cross-sectional area would be 90 degrees to that, which would just be straight through the middle, right? For this one, across the long axis of the muscle is the same. This is the longest part of it. So that goes right through the middle. Okay, now we've got the physiological cross-sectional area. This one's different in the fact that it is 90 degrees to the long axis of fibers. Okay, we're going to look at it and we're going to see, okay, which way are those fibers running? Okay, so they're running up and down, right? So that's the long axis, which means that this bad boy is just going to go straight through the middle, same as the anatomical. But then it gets different over here. Which way are these guys running? Okay, they're kind of running slightly on an angle up. At least they're supposed to. I've drawn it. So long axis might be like this, right? Because yeah, they're supposed to be a bit more diagonal, which means that the physiological cross-section area of this is right through the middle of the muscle again. Right, so now looking and comparing the two of those, right? Which one of these do you think is more proportional to strength, right? Well, it would have to be this one, right? Because this one goes through the muscle, perfect. And this one goes through the muscle. But the anatomical one, only the strap-like muscle does it go through the middle. This one, it kind of just, you know. So this one gets a good slice of going through the middle of the muscle, captures the whole thing. So this one, the physiological, is more proportional to strength. Okay, I'm not going to rub this out again. But let's just imagine quickly that this muscle and this muscle, right? are made exactly with the same amount of sarcomeres, right? But the only difference is that this one here has got more of those sarcomeres lined up in series. And this one's got more of them lined up in parallel, right? So now what's going to come out of that, right? Okay, so I've just quickly added. This one has got more in series versus parallel. This one here has got more in parallel versus in series. So what does that quickly mean? Let me just give you the quick explanation. So in series sarcomeres are tightly related to contractility. And if you don't know what contractility means, contractility, it basically refers to how a muscle can shorten, like how good it is at shortening, its shortening capacity, and the velocity at which it can shorten. It has nothing to do with the strength of or the force of the contraction. It's purely just to do with how far it can contract and how quickly it contracts. So this one can shorten much smaller and at a faster velocity than this one could. Now, opposite, sarcomeres in parallel are more closely related to strength, isometric strength, all types of strength, and they're also tightly proportional to the physiological cross-section area. What I meant by that, is the physiological cross-section area is proportional to the amount of sarcomeres in parallel, which is then proportional to the amount of force that can be generated. All right, I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration, I guess, of different types of way muscles are built up and how they contract before I go into depth about the in-series versus parallel. So down the bottom here, I've drawn a single muscle fiber, right? And this is going to relate to this diagram I've drawn here. But let's say, right, that this single muscle fiber, which is the same as in this muscle and this muscle, right, can shorten to 2/3 of its length, right? So single muscle fiber can shorten to 2/3 of its length. So we're assuming that this now, being the entire muscle belly, that every single muscle fiber within this belly can shorten at the same capacity, which is 2/3, right? So this is it at rest, and we've got two different muscles drawn here. So we've got just a long muscle belly, and then we've got another long-ish muscle belly, but we've got like this tendon attached to it, which has got a longer tendon. So that's at rest. And then we're going to go over here to contracting, and we can see that the muscle that's attached, not with the tendon, is going to be able to shorten a lot further, whereas the one that isn't, it's still kind of the same size as this one, right? But look at where it started compared to this one. So yeah, that's just showcasing how muscles are just really different to one another, and they shorten differently, and there's so many different things that can impact them, even though they can be built with in-series and stuff. There's still other things that can impact that. Okay guys, I'm going to talk about these in-series sarcomeres now. So this is a myofibril, and these little lines in it are the sarcomeres, right? So let's first cover the fact that in-series sarcomeres don't add any extra force to your muscles, right? So imagine this, right? Each sarcomere is trying to generate force to shorten the muscle, right? Each of these are trying to do that. But what happens, right, is each of these, because of Newton's law, right, generate an equal and opposite reaction. So now we've got the arrows showing which way the force goes, right? And we can see that this one here is trying to generate force that way, so is this one, but there's also a force of the equal magnitude coming back at it. So these two forces are basically just going to cancel each other out, right? Okay, let's move to the next one and see if we're going to get any shortening here. Any force here. Okay, he's trying to go that way, he's trying, okay, they cancel each other out. They cancel each other out as well. So on and so forth. It would be the same if I kept drawing, but I think you get the case, right? So there's not going to be any isometric force from adding sarcomeres in series. However, always a big however, right? We're going to get lots of extra contractility from this bad boy. So let's say, for example, for the sake of simplicity, right, a sarcomere is 1 centimeter long. It's not. Let's say it's 1 centimeter long, and and this one here can shorten by 3 millimeters, right? So that means if we add another one here, this can now shorten by 6 millimeters. If we add another one, it can now shorten by 9 millimeters, 12 millimeters, so on and so forth, right? So every additional sarcomere we add, we're going to get an extra 3 millimeters of shortening capacity, right? Those numbers aren't right, by the way. I'm just making an example, right? To try and make it a bit easy. And the same thing goes for shortening velocity, right? So let's go back to here. Let's say it's still 1 centimeter, but this sarcomere can shorten at 3 millimeters per second, right? As a velocity. So if we add another one, we can now have a myofibril that shortens by 6 millimeters a second if it needs to, and so forth. Now we've got 9 millimeters per second, 12 millimeters per second, and so on and so forth for the more we add in series. So that means the sartorius muscle here, which is on the leg, as you can imagine, that is a very long strap muscle. So that muscle would have very good shortening velocity and a very good ability to get short as well. And that's purely because there's so many sarcomeres in series that it can shorten so much. Okay, now we're very briefly going to talk about these in parallel sarcomeres. So we're going to do what we did last time as well. We're going to get rid of the myth first, I guess. So if you imagine this has, let's keep with the example before, right? So 3 millimeters, each one can shorten. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 21 millimeters. This one can shorten 21 millimeters, and it can also shorten at 21 millimeters per second, right? So if we add another set of sarcomeres in parallel, right, it would be the exact same amount, which meant that this would also shorten at the exact same capacity and velocity, right? So if we added another one, it would be the exact same thing, right? So adding them in parallel isn't going to help with contractility because every single one we add is just going to have the exact same shortening capacity as the very first one, if that makes sense, right? So adding them in parallel is not going to do anything in regard to shortening velocity and maximum capacity to shorten. However, right, if we add more, so if we have just one, right, it's 1 times strong. If we have 2, it becomes 2 times as strong. If we have 3, it becomes 3 times as strong, and so forth until you have a massive belly like this, where there's now, 4? So 7, so now it's become 7 times as strong. I apologize for my pens, they're kind of crap, but yeah, so that's how in parallel work, basically. Every one you add is basically going to add to its strength. Okay, so we're going to jump into this absolute nightmare that you see before you. So we've got the strap-like muscle again, and basically I've got here, we're going to compare the in-series component to the in-parallel component, and you might recognize this force velocity curve from previous video if you watched it, but basically these red dots, by the way, don't mean that they're greater, it's just I can't draw them on top of each other. So when you see them really close, it just means that it's the same. Anyway, so we know the in-series isn't going to give us any strength, right? However, in this increasing concentric velocity, we're actually going to get increased strength. And that's because this muscle is able to shorten further than the other one, basically. So that means we're going to get greater concentric shortening velocity at a given velocity. And then if we compare it to the parallel, we're not going to get any extra concentric shortening velocity, but we are going to get an increase in isometric and eccentric force. And then I've drawn that here to compare them again. So we've got the in parallel component has got more eccentric and isometric force. However, at a given velocity right here, this in series segment is going to become much more effective. And then to quickly finish, if you want to increase your sarcomeres in series, eccentric strength training is going to be really good and effective for that, as well as chronic stretching. However, if you want to get stronger and get your more sarcomeres in series, just normal strength training is going to help you with that. And that's what happens to a muscle, it gets bigger.